Hi everybody, thank you so much for joining us here today. I'm so happy to see all of you here. My name is Austin, I'm from the Tulsa Debate League, and here at Tulsa Debate League, we think that every young person has a chance to be something amazing, and that includes you. Before we start off on today's topic, I just want to ask everybody a question. Would you rather get in a spaceship and fly to a distant planet, or would you rather get in a submarine and be able to travel the oceans? That's kind of a hard one, and I think I personally would love to go to space just because it would be awesome to be in zero gravity and see all the different things I could do. On our last show, we talked about demonstrating passion, which is important whenever you're speaking in public because demonstrating passion lets people know that not only have you researched your topic and you're familiar with it, but that you actually care about it and that it's meaningful to you. This week we're going to talk about something a little different, and that's body language. Whenever we're speaking in public, not only do we want to sound like we care about our topic, but we want to look like we do as well. Demonstrating passion is important because it conveys to people that we care about our topic. In the same way, body language does the same thing. And whenever we're talking about body language, we're talking about using the entire body. But we'll start off just with the eyes. Whenever we're talking to somebody, whether that's to a small group of people, whether that's to a teacher, or maybe to our friends, it's important to make eye contact. After all, if you're speaking to someone but you're not necessarily looking them in the eyes or necessarily even looking in their direction, they might not even know that you're talking to them. Now you're probably wondering though, whenever you're speaking in public, you're speaking to a group of people, so how do you make eye contact? Well, it's actually kind of a simple trick, and it's something that I do personally to make sure that I don't get too nervous when I'm talking in front of a big group of people. Say that I have to give a speech and I'll be reading out of a book. Well, I don't necessarily want to be looking at my audience and looking right down at my book. But what I do want to do is have my book as a reference, so that way I can glance at it, but for the most part I'll be making eye contact to you, and to you. I'll keep my notes as a reference, but that doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to be sitting here looking at them. I'm going to be looking around, and I'm going to be making sure that people are listening to me and making sure that they're connected to what I'm saying. Whenever you don't make eye contact with people, they might get a little bit bored. Think about it this way. Have you ever been in class and maybe the teacher wasn't talking about something really interesting, so you started to doodle on one of your papers? Well, let's just say that teacher suddenly made eye contact with you or looked in your direction. Would you keep slacking off, or would you suddenly start doing your work again? In the same way, whenever you're speaking in public, you're not only just conveying information to someone, you're not just telling them some facts, you're also trying to entertain them and make sure that they listen to what you have to say. So let's talk about another important element of public speaking, and that's being able to project your voice. So have you ever had a conversation with somebody where slowly they just sort of start talking softly, or maybe they mumble their words and you just can't really understand what they have to say? Well, in the same way, whenever you're speaking in public, you have to keep in mind, and it depends on the size of the room you're speaking in or the situation in which you're speaking, but that person all the way in the back, they might not be able to hear you. And that's a problem. After all, you've done all this work, you've done all this research, you've become an expert on your topic, and those people out there, they deserve to hear what you have to say. So make sure that they can hear you. Nowadays, that might seem a little odd. After all, whenever we're speaking in public now, it's probably over a Zoom call or on Google Meet. But if we were in a classroom or an auditorium or a gym, remember, there's a lot of noise going on, there's a lot of echoes going on. That person in the back of the room, always remember, speak to them. So we've been talking about body language, but let's actually talk about what you should do with your body. So let's recap on what we've learned so far. Whenever we're speaking in public, We have our notes. We're not looking directly at them, but we're making eye contact with people. We're projecting our voice so everybody can hear us. But let's say I'm doing all of those things, but I'm also just gonna read my notes like this and just kind of slouch over. That's not the way to go. After all, let's say you're in a classroom and your teacher started doing that. They're leaned up against the dry erase board and they're just writing numbers on there and they're saying, "Oh, good, Jimmy, what's the answer to number 3? If you saw somebody doing that, you probably wouldn't take them so seriously, would you? After all, if somebody's body language doesn't say, "Take me seriously," then the people listening, they're not going to take you seriously either. And like we've been saying, you've done so much work, you've done so much research, people deserve to hear what you have to say, so make sure you do everything you can to make them want to listen to you. So whenever you're speaking in public, remember, keep your shoulders level. If you're sitting, make sure you're sitting up straight. If you're standing, make sure you're standing up straight. Remember, if you're talking about something that's a serious topic, like a war or something bad that happened in history, you don't necessarily want to be smiling while you're talking about it, but you don't necessarily want to just be frowning the entire time either. It's also important that whenever you're speaking in public, do your best to not be fidgeting around. After all, right now when I'm moving around, it's probably difficult for you to understand everything I'm saying because you're distracted. In the same way, when you're speaking in public, you don't necessarily want to be rigid and stiff, but you don't necessarily want to be moving around and fidgeting everywhere because that will distract people and they might not necessarily hear all the great things you have to say. And sometimes that can be a hard thing to do. After all, sometimes when people get nervous, they fidget and they move around. It's just something we do naturally. So sometimes the trick, whenever we're speaking in public, you have to make sure that you find a way to calm yourself down. After all, whether you're talking to a stadium full of people or just a classroom, it can be nervous talking in front of a group of people. One of the things you might want to try doing though is a breathing exercise. One thing that we can try doing right now is this. For 5 seconds, breathe in through your nose. Hold it for 6 seconds. And then exhale. Sometimes when we're getting nervous, our heart starts to beat faster. And when our heart starts to beat faster, that makes us breathe faster too. But if you can get in control of your breathing, you can get in control of the rest of your body. And you might not necessarily lose all the nerves you have, but you will be able to get in the zone and you'll be able to do things a little bit more confidently. You'll also be able to be aware of things like your body language. Are you making eye contact with everybody in the audience? Are you making sure that you're projecting your voice? A breathing exercise might not necessarily always help you, but everybody has a different way that they can help themselves calm down. For example, just think about a place or a time where you felt really, really happy or really, really content and comfortable. After all, and even though it's not always your fault, if you were going to go up and give a speech in public and you were holding your notes but you were so nervous that you were jittering, it'll probably be so distracting that people won't be able to hear all the great things you have to say. So before you go up there and speak to a group of people, try to center yourself. Try to calm down and break those nerves. And keep in mind, the more you do something, the easier it will become. The more times that you speak in front of a big group of people, the more times you practice speaking in public, the easier it will be and the less nervous you'll become. Now, like I said a little bit earlier, nowadays, most of the time when we're speaking in front of a group of people, we're going to be doing it through a camera, over a computer, on a phone. And it can be a little bit different to speak to a group that's virtual and not in person. There's a few things you can do though to make sure that even if you're presenting something or speaking to a group virtually, that you can make the most out of the situation. For one, make sure that your camera is working on your computer or your phone. Make sure that it's unmuted so people can hear you. And if you're listening, make sure that you're muted so that way any noise or interference on your end isn't going to interrupt the person speaking. Another thing to keep in mind, whenever you're speaking to a group virtually, it's still important to remember, you have to project your voice a little bit. You have to make sure that people can hear you. So before you get started talking about all the details and all the research and information that you've been working so hard on, make sure that you ask the group, can you hear me? Is this okay? Also, when you're speaking to a group virtually, make sure they can see you. Because after all, even though you can't really make eye contact with somebody through a computer all the time, especially if it's a group of people that you're talking to, it's good for them to see you, and it's good for them to see your body language and know that you're sincere. After all, they might not necessarily take you as seriously if you just log in and you're in your sweatpants and your sweatshirt on the couch watching TV. Another important thing to keep in mind about body language is that whenever you're in a debate, specifically when you're in a debate, you might be up on stage and you might have to listen to some people talk about a topic that you really disagree with. Let's say the debate's about funding schools and you have a very strong opinion about the matter, but the other side, they're arguing the exact opposite of what you believe. Remember, whenever you're listening to someone speak, there's also a certain way that you should use body language. Don't do something like roll your eyes. And definitely don't throw up your hands or interrupt them and say no or you're wrong. Remember, the point of a debate is that everybody gets to speak and everybody gets to really kind of fill out the argument that they have. It's not necessarily about being right or wrong, but it's about how you present your facts and how you make your argument. Alright everybody, so let's just round out the show by talking about what we've learned today. Remember, whenever we're speaking in public, it's important that maybe we can have our notes with us, but we're not looking directly at them. We're making eye contact with the different people in our audience. Remember to project your voice. Talk to that person all the way in the back of the room. Remember to have good posture. Keep your shoulders level. Make sure you sit up straight or stand up straight. And if you're presenting virtually, keep in mind that people might be having technical difficulties. So before you start speaking, ask everyone, can you hear me? Can you see me? And also, the reason we want to have good body language is because it makes people take us seriously. And you have done so much work and done so much research, people deserve to hear what you have to say, and you deserve to be taken seriously. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I was so happy to be able to talk to all of you, and I'll hopefully see you all very soon. Again, my name is Austin. I'm from the Tulsa Debate League, and here at Tulsa Debate League, we think that every young person has a chance to be something amazing, and that includes you.
Danajaya Hediarachi. I see something. I see something. Danajaya Hediarachi.
You and I are not very different from this flower. Just like this flower is unique, you are unique. All of us has something special that makes us as beautiful. Do you know what makes you special? Now the answer to that can be a little difficult to find, because sometimes life has a cruel way picking out your petals, breaking you in two, and throwing you into the trash. And when you're broken, it's very difficult to feel special. Mr. Contest Chair, my fellow flowers, I can remember the first time I broke. I was 17 years old. I had already flunked high school and managed to get myself arrested. Now, I wasn't afraid of the cops, but there was one person I was very afraid of. And that was my mama. Raise your hand if you have an emotional mother. Let me see. Put them all together, you get mama. I can hear her scream outside the police station. Even the cops were afraid. She came up to me, held the iron bars, looked into my eyes, and I saw a tear coming down her face. Now, I've seen my mama cry before, but mothers cry 3 types of tears. Tears of joy, tears of sorrow, and tears of shame. And when a son sees a mother cry tears of shame, that's a life-changing moment. She looked at me and said, "Son, I want you to be a better man." That night, when I drove home, my dad was waiting for me at home. Now, my dad is a cool dad. Raise your hand if you have a cool dad. Put them all together, you get my dad. My dad came up to me and said, "Son, it's okay. You flunked your exams. You already got arrested. That's fine. You get that from your mother's side. I want you to start working immediately." And I said, "Okay." So my dad took me to meet one of his friends called Sam. Now, Sam was an accountant who had an accounting firm and had generously decided to make me his personal assistant. And there he was. He looked like a teddy bear. But this man was special. I looked at him and he looked at me. And then he said the most amazing thing. He said, "Son, I see something in you, but I don't know what it is. If you decide to work with me, I can help you find that something." And I was like, "Whoa, that's the first time in my whole life somebody has ever told they see something in me." And I started working for Sam. And every day after work, he used to tell me stories about the world, about history, about culture, about philosophy. And it was much more interesting than what I learned in school. And I discovered I can dream. And I started dreaming, ladies and gentlemen. After 1 year, I went back into high school, completed my exams, and went into college. After successfully completing college, I found a great girl, but not a job. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. Have you ever had that problem? And when you're lost, it's difficult to feel special. So I went back to my cool dad. And I said, "Dad, I feel lost." He said, "You are like your mother." So my dad introduced me to this strange club that had a strange name, with strange people talking. On the first meeting, they told me to do something called a table topic. I aced it. But while I was speaking, I see a strange man seated in the back row. Humble, simple. The unfailing quality of kindness in his eyes. As soon as I finished, he walked up to me, looked me dead straight in the eye, and said, "Son, I see something in you, but I don't know what it is. If you come here twice a month, maybe we can find that something." And ladies and gentlemen, I discovered I could speak, and I love speaking. And that led me to become a teacher. I know what it's like to not have enough money in your bank account. I know what it's like to worry when the bills start coming in. And sometimes, in the middle of the night, I wake up my beautiful wife and I ask her, "Honey, why did you marry me?" She says, "I saw something in you, but I still don't know what it is." Ladies and gentlemen, today I'm a dreamer, I'm a speaker, and I learned the unfailing quality of unconditional love from my wife. I was broken, and I've been broken, lost, and broke many times in my life. But the people in my life were able to reach into the trash can and make me whole again. If it was up to me, I would have never been able to do that. And this is why if you have great people in your life, no matter how broke, how lost, or how broken you become, they can piece you back together. Ladies and gentlemen, when I look at you, I see something in you. But I don't know what it is. Over to you. My dad came up to me and said, son, it's okay. You flunked your exams. You already got arrested.
One of the most important things that you need to realize is when you get nervous, you try to cover your vital organs. And that's why you would see a lot of speakers sometimes fold their hands, bring their hands in front of them, and that's a sign of nervousness. Great speakers keep their body open, so there is no barrier between you and me.
Raise your hand if you have an emotional mother. Let me see. Put them all together, you get mama.
And something that when you're starting out, you gotta be very conscious about is keep your body open. Here's tip number 2. Have your palms open. Do this exercise with me. Take a look at your palms, turn them around, take a look at the inside of your palms again. What side relaxes your eye? If you really concentrate, when you look at the inside of your palm, your eye relaxes. And a lot of great speakers, they open their palms towards the audience, showing a more openness. And that allows the audience to connect with the speaker better, as opposed to showing the back of your hand.
Ladies and gentlemen, today I'm a dreamer, I'm a speaker, and I learned the unfailing quality of unconditional love from my wife.
Number 3, get comfortable with the stage. When you're comfortable on the stage that you're speaking on, your body is free to move about, use body language. But if you're not comfortable with that stage, and if you feel foreign on that stage, what happens is your body language starts to constrict and you start to cover your body up.
And when a son sees a mother cry tears of shame, that's a life-changing moment. She looked at me and said, son, I want you to be a better man.
Whatever you do, don't touch the podium. As soon as you do that, you're going to be leaning on it, you're going to be shaking that podium, and you will be doing all sorts of things on the podium. So what you do is you keep a comfortable distance between you and the podium. You can keep your notes on it, but you can use your hands to gesture. Don't rest your hands on the podium. So keep a distance, and you can gesture, use body language as you want from a little distance from the podium.